Hello everyone and welcome back to Horror Stories. I know many of you use these episodes to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the episodes. Story 1. My name is Mark. I'm 38 years old. I'm the husband of Lisa and the father of Emily, who is 8, and Noah, who is 5. We live hundreds of miles from the ocean, so every August we save everything we can to spend one precious week by the sea. This year we almost didn't go. Every place was either fully booked or outrageously expensive. But 3 days before our vacation, Lisa found a new listing. It was a beach house with 4 bedrooms and a private path leading straight to the sand, offered at half price because a family had canceled. The photos showed a white-painted deck, glass doors opening to the ocean, and a small gate that opened directly onto soft sand. I didn't hesitate. I booked it immediately before the price could change. The owner gave us a code for the lock, warned us that it was an old property with charm, and wished us a good stay. No matter what, we were excited. We packed swimsuits, fishing rods, and enough snacks to feed a troop of scouts. We left at dawn on Saturday. After 4 hours on the highway and another hour on winding coastal roads, we reached the address. The house sat on a low dune with gray shingles worn by salt, but the view behind it was a dream. A blue sea stretching to the horizon. The code worked. As we stepped inside, we were met with a smell of chlorine mixed with sea breeze. The living room had mismatched, slightly sagging furniture, but sunlight poured in through the large windows, and we could hear gulls above the waves. The sliding door opened to a strip of grass, then a small wooden bridge, and finally to sand that disappeared into the water. The kids ran in circles, shouting that every room had an ocean view. Even Lisa, who usually worries about deals that seem too good to be true, was smiling. We grilled hot dogs on the deck. The kids ran to the shore, and we all watched the sunset through scattered red-stained clouds. By 10 p.m., we were sunburned, full and ready to sleep. The bedrooms lined a tiled hallway, Emily and Noah in the front, a spare room in the middle, and ours at the end near the terrace. I slid the glass door shut, latched the small plastic lock, and turned off the hallway light. The waves sounded underneath the house. Around 2 in the morning, half asleep, I thought I heard distant thunder, but I never opened my eyes. The sound mixed into my dreams until dawn. A gentle shake woke me up. Lisa stood next to me in the faint morning light, holding a towel. "The floor is wet," she murmured. I sat up, placed my feet on the cool tile, and saw it. A thin line of dark sand stretched from the patio door to the end of the hall, the grains glittering like sugar on the white floor. The door was open about 3 inches. The breeze was moving the curtain. A pang of guilt hit me. I figured maybe I hadn't latched it properly, and the wind had pushed it just enough to open, letting in moisture and sand. I shut it firmly, locked it, cleaned the floor, and promised Lisa I'd be more careful. The kids were still asleep, so we said nothing. Sunday was for exploring the boardwalk. We bought saltwater taffy, cheap kites, and a tray of fried clams that soaked the cardboard. Emily won a plush dolphin in a rigged game. Noah insisted on a necklace with a shark tooth, and the afternoon faded under August heat. When we got back, we rinsed off in the outdoor shower and put the kids to bed by 9. This time I closed the patio door until the latch clicked twice. I even wedged a dining chair against it, like one does in a motel. Storms rolled in after midnight. The house creaked in the wind. I stayed awake a while, counting seconds between flashes of lightning slipping through the curtain, until the steady sound of the sea lulled me. At 6 on Monday, Lisa woke me again. "It happened again," she said, trembling. The chair had been moved, the door was open, and the same thin line of sand crossed the floor. But this time, the trail stopped in front of Emily's door before turning toward ours. The kids were still sleeping. A chill ran through my arms. A wind strong enough to move a chair should have thrown the door open. But the gap was clean and narrow. I forced a smile, assured Lisa I'd handle it, and tried to act normal during the breakfast. But my mind kept replaying those images. Damp footprints, silent feet. After pancakes, I drove into town looking for solutions. A hardware store clerk recommended a metal bar that would fit into the sliding track and a cheap magnetic alarm that would screech if the door moved. Back home, I installed everything, tested it, and felt some weight lift from my chest. The kids built sandcastles. Lisa read on the terrace while the sunset painted the sky purple. I thought maybe my fears were just that, an old lock and strong sea breeze. We grilled corn, turned off the lights by 10, and all fell asleep to the hum of the ocean. The alarm didn't go off. That should have been a good sign. But on Tuesday at dawn, stepping into the hallway, I felt roughness under my heel. Sand again, this time wider and denser, clearly left by wet feet. The patio door was shut, but the security bar had been carefully removed and leaned against the wall. The alarm was simply gone. Panic froze me. I ran to the kids' rooms. Both were asleep, unaware that someone had been inches from them. Fear turned into action. I called the property manager. She suggested maybe a cleaner used a spare code. She said she'd check and call me. I didn't wait. I drove to a big box store and bought 2 motion-activated security cameras with memory cards. I mounted one outside on the terrace, facing the gate to the beach, and another inside in a corner of the hallway. I checked the angles from my phone. Both covered the path from beach to our bedrooms. Still, I kept the kids close all afternoon. We played board games until yawns took over. At 11, I checked every lock, inserted the bar, activated the new alarm, and left the hallway nightlight on. Then I went to bed with a wooden bat in my hands, eyes fixed on the strip of light under the door. Maybe an hour passed. The house creaked as if settling. The wind shook the walls. I must have fallen asleep because next thing I remember was dawn painting the ceiling. Lisa was sitting up, gripping my arm tightly. We stared at the floor. Sand. More of it now, stopping right at our bedroom door. The kids stirred on their mattresses beside our bed but didn't wake. I motioned Lisa to be quiet, tiptoed to the hallway camera, and removed the memory card with shaking fingers. I opened the laptop in the kitchen, inserted the card, pulled up the footage, and found the exterior camera's thumbnail. I clicked play. Time, 3:02 a.m. The terrace was empty for 2 seconds. Then a figure climbed the stairs from the beach to the gate. He wore dark shorts and a long-sleeved shirt soaked to the waist. His bare feet left dark, glistening prints. He paused, opened the gate latch with one finger, and walked to the patio door. Effortlessly, he removed the bar like he'd done it before. The alarm should have sounded when the magnet was separated. Yet in the recording, there was no sound. The man pulled something small from his pocket, maybe a magnet or remote, placed it over the alarm sensor, silently disarmed it, pocketed it again, and slid the door open with ease. Then he entered. The hallway camera caught him walking across the tiles, glancing left and right. He stopped in front of Emily's room and stood still for 5 long seconds, then turned and did the same in front of Noah's. I leaned closer to the screen. Despite the video's grainy quality, his face looked strange. His jaw tilted oddly, and his eyes were wide, like he was listening. He held no flashlight or phone. In front of our door, he stopped again, tilted his head, then stared directly at the camera, raised one hand and covered the lens with his palm. The screen went black. He must have exited the same way he came in. His entire presence lasted 42 seconds. Watching the footage, I felt an icy void spreading from my chest to my fingers. Lisa let out a small sob. I picked up the phone. The 911 operator listened in silence, then dispatched 2 officers. They arrived at 8 o'clock, watched the footage twice, and went to check the terrace for prints. But the wind had already dried the boards. One officer remarked that sometimes transients camp on dunes, steal things, and vanish before sunrise. They promised to increase patrols. Their words felt hollow, like a bandage on a deep wound. I spent the afternoon installing more defenses. I placed a solid metal bar across the frame to the posts. The new alarm was wired to a battery box hidden in a locked cabinet. I also added a deadbolt on the interior kitchen door leading to the terrace. There would be no quiet entries that night. We made pizza, laughed at the mustache Noah made with sauce, and pretended the beach was still a magical place. But when bedtime came, I moved the kids' mattresses into our room, barricaded the door, and left the laptop on with the live camera feed. Time crawled. The tide peaked. Waves hit the supports beneath the terrace. At 2:40 a.m., the hallway camera triggered, and then immediately went dark. My heart pounded. I shook Lisa, grabbed the bat under the bed, and whispered to the kids to stay still. I crept to the door. Before I touched the handle, every motion light in the living room lit up, and a loud alarm filled the house. A second later, I heard a metallic crash, like a crowbar hitting a locked door. I yanked open the bedroom door. The hallway lights blinded me. I heard fast footsteps across the tiles, then through the kitchen, and another crash. Terrace furniture tipping over. I got there just in time to see a shadow leap the gate, land in the sand, and vanish into the dark ocean. Broken glass glittered on the deck. He had smashed the kitchen window after failing to enter the sealed door. The alarm still screamed. I locked the door with trembling hands and called 911 again. The same officers returned within minutes, this time with a senior detective. They found fresh, deep, barefoot tracks going to and from the shoreline. Apparently, he had waited for high tide so waves would erase his approach, and when stealth failed, he tried force. The detective believed the intruder had watched the house for days, studied the locks, learned our routines. When tricks failed, he got more aggressive. Sunlight revealed a grim scene: boarded up glass, toppled furniture, and an air of unease that couldn't be ignored. Lisa started packing while officers searched the dunes behind the house. They found a hidden path among reeds leading half a kilometer down the coast to a ruined lifeguard shack. Inside was a rolled sleeping bag, empty water jugs, and a pile of miscellaneous items: keychains, hair ties, small toys, and one object that froze my blood: a dolphin sticker, the same one Emily had put on her suitcase. They also found a notebook full of lists with dates, addresses, and notes like "with kids," "no dog," "sliding lock." Our address was written on the last page. We didn't stay to see more. By noon, we loaded the truck. The property manager refunded our remaining 2 nights, apologized, and promised better security. Empty promises at that point. We drove inland under a blazing sun while the kids slept deeply, unaware of how close danger had come. Lisa stared out the window in silence, wiping away tears. One hand gripped the steering wheel, the other wrapped around her shoulder, my fingers still trembling. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. The detective had news. A night patrol had spotted a barefoot man on the beach near another rental, matching the image from our camera. While fleeing, he tripped on rocks and fractured an ankle. In his backpack, they found lockpicks, a waterproof phone, and a memory card with photos: sleeping families, bedrooms lit at night, close-ups of children's faces. The photo of our kids was fourth in the sequence. His name meant nothing to me. He had no ID, no listed address. The detective said he'd face trespassing and stalking charges, maybe more, but warned the system rarely holds people like that for long. Change all your locks, he told us, and trust your instincts. Fall came to our suburb. Emily started 3rd grade. Noah began kindergarten. We planted chrysanthemums by the front walk, pretending everything was normal. But every night I checked the doors twice, and a 3rd time before I go to sleep. Every morning I wake before sunrise, walk the hallway in silence, and scan the floor for even one grain of sand. I remind myself the man is in jail, that the beach is far away, that my alarm is loud enough to wake the dead. But I still remember the way he stood silently outside my children's door, so calm, like that house was his. Bargains always have a hidden cost. Mine was losing faith in a locked door, and I don't think I'll ever get it back. Story 2. Last August, my city hosted a free midnight movie screening at Riverside Park. I had just finished an exhausting week of work, and it seemed like the perfect way to unwind, watching a movie under the open sky. My younger cousin Sammy, who was visiting for the summer, insisted on coming with me. We packed a blanket, 2 water bottles, and some snacks, then caught the last bus downtown. By 11:15 p.m., the park was glowing with string lights. A portable screen stood near the bandstand, and hundreds of people strolled around like it was a mini festival. Street vendors offered popcorn from rolling carts. An ice cream truck was parked by the curb, and city volunteers in bright orange shirts guided families to the grass. A few bike patrol officers circled the area, casually chatting with attendees. Everything felt safe, almost festive, and I remember thinking the city should do this kind of thing more often. We picked a spot near the center, close enough to get a good view of the screen, but with enough room to stretch our legs. The air was warm, and the smell of freshly cut grass blended with the buttery scent of popcorn. Sammy spread out the blanket while I placed our phones in one corner and my wallet in another, using them as makeshift weights to keep the breeze from lifting it. Around us, couples cuddled, kids ran around with glow sticks, and a portable speaker played soft jazz as they tested the projector. At 11:55, the event coordinator grabbed the mic, thanked everyone for coming, and reminded us that the restrooms and exits were at the back corners of the park. That's when I noticed the exits. Just simple mesh gates held open with loose chains to keep them from swinging shut in the wind. When the clock hit midnight, the park lights dimmed and the movie started. It was an old adventure classic, familiar and lighthearted, the kind you could half watch while soaking in the night. For the first 30 minutes, everything went smoothly. People laughed at funny scenes, whispered to each other, or raised their phones to capture the vibe. Every so often, I noticed the orange-shirted volunteers walking the side paths with small flashlights, checking trash bins or helping late arrivals. I felt a strange pride in my city for pulling off something so pleasant without any issues. Exactly 47 minutes in, the projector's image began to flicker. I first noticed it as a bright white rectangle that flashed across the screen before it went completely black. There were murmurs. A second later, the audio cut out too, plunging the park into a heavy silence. The street lamps on the edges stayed lit, but the central lawn fell into shadow. Someone near the front yelled, "Probably just a loose cable," and a few nervous laughs echoed through the crowd. Then all the portable lights went out at once. The decorative bulbs strung overhead, the food cart lanterns, even the tiny badge lights worn by the volunteers. It felt deliberate, like someone had flipped a master switch for 3 or 4 seconds. Everything remained calm. Some parents turned on their phone flashlights. Kids giggled. Adults made jokes about the cheap infrastructure of the event. I reached out to grab my phone and join in, but all I touched was grass. The phone I'd placed in the blanket corner was gone. I pattered around, convinced it had slipped, but found nothing. Sammy leaned in and whispered that his was missing too. That's when a sharp scream rang out behind us. A man yelled to give it back, followed by a dull thud and the sound of hurried footsteps through the crowd. The lawn erupted with confused voices. People stood up, bumping into each other, pointing their scattered lights in every direction. I bent down to grab my wallet, but only felt fabric. It was gone too. My stomach knotted. In the dim light from the screen, I could make out silhouettes moving quickly between blankets, hands rifling through backpacks, a crouched figure darting away. It all felt too coordinated. It didn't seem random, but like a well-rehearsed operation. Someone screamed near the screen. I turned just in time to see a young mother frantically searching her now empty stroller. "My baby," she cried out. A new wave of panic rippled through the park. Some ran toward the nearest exits. Others fled toward the restroom lights. Amid the chaos, I grabbed Sammy's arm and told him not to let go of me. A few meters away, a metallic clank rang out, followed by another in the opposite corner. Brief flashes, like someone using a portable saw on metal. The crowd froze, listening, then bolted once they realized what was happening. The mesh exit gates were being shut and locked with heavy padlocks. I heard the metal creaking as it was chained up. Whoever had cut the lights was sealing the exits. A sudden burst of light blinded me. The projector came back on, but it wasn't playing a movie. Instead, a bright white test screen lit the entire park like a spotlight. Under that harsh glare, I saw overturned blankets, spilled popcorn, stunned faces. People were screaming names, husbands calling for wives, friends counting each other. I counted too. Sammy was still by my side, but several people who had been nearby were now gone. The stroller mom sobbed uncontrollably, repeating her daughter's name. Farther back, an elderly man had blood on his cheek. He said someone hit him and took his watch. Panic drove everyone to the fences. A group reached the north gate and shook it, screaming for help. The lock held. A woman tried to climb over it, made it halfway, then fell when others began to push. On the west side, a larger group used a trash can as a step, but fell when a man slipped and broke his ankle. People shouted for bolt cutters, for police, for any kind of help. The bike officers I'd seen earlier were nowhere to be found. Outside, the street looked deserted. Just a few dark cars parked nearby. No sirens. I grabbed Sammy's hand and led him toward the bandstand, hoping the volunteers had radios there. The wooden stage was empty. The projector booth, really just a folding table with a laptop, had been overturned, its cords cut. Not a single orange-shirted volunteer remained. It was like the entire staff had vanished along with the missing people. Sammy tugged my arm and pointed to the far end of the park path. A white utility van sat silently, headlights off. The rear doors were wide open. Inside, shadows moved. Then the doors slammed shut and the van pulled away. It didn't speed. It glided away with terrifying calm, like it knew no one could catch it. It reached a broken part of the fence hidden behind some bushes and disappeared through it. The engine barely made a sound. Only then did the first police cruiser arrive, on the opposite street. Blue lights flashed on the locked gates, but the fence still separated us. Officers shouted instructions and ran to get tools. Dozens of us crowded the fence, begging them to hurry. I saw at least 6 parents crying for their children. Near us, 2 blankets lay on the grass. On one of them rested a teddy bear, and nothing else. It took 15 minutes for the fire department to arrive with bolt cutters. During that time, we could only wait, trapped, listening to the noises of the night beyond the fence. Twice we heard engines nearby, but never sirens. Maybe the thieves moving to another spot. Somewhere in the distant city, a dog barked. Then silence. I tried not to imagine why. When the firefighters finally cut the first gate, the crowd pushed so hard the frame bent forward. The responders forced us to leave in small groups. They set up triage tables, took statements, and tried to calm frantic parents. Police radios crackled with scattered reports. Mentions of white vans on Fairmont Avenue, another on King Street, units in pursuit. But nothing sounded confirmed. Sammy and I spent 3 hours giving details. Where we sat, what we lost, every face we remembered. Officers wrote down phone serials, bank card info, license plates, anything to help trace stolen identities. By 4 a.m., the number of missing people had risen to 14, 11 adults and 3 children, including the baby. I'll never forget the detective kneeling in front of the young mother, scribbling in his notebook with trembling hands while she answered through sobs. The horizon turned pink as dawn broke, and we were finally allowed to leave. Sammy and I walked home in silence, empty pockets, heavy hearts. I replayed the night over and over, searching for clues I might have missed. The flicker in the projector, the volunteers' shirts. Did any badge look different? Were the bike cops wearing the right patches? Was the white van parked there before the blackout? Every possible answer felt just out of reach. In the following days, the city held press conferences promising a full investigation. The news called it the Midnight Park Abductions. Hundreds of tips came in, none conclusive. Nearby street cameras had been sabotaged, cables cut just like the projectors. Whoever planned this knew city infrastructure, emergency response timing, and how to vanish in front of dozens of eyes. A week later, police found one of the stolen phones at a pawn shop, 3 counties away. The receipt was fake. The seller used an untraceable identity. The trail vanished. The baby's tiny shoe was found in a storm drain near the river, but divers found no other sign. For months, telephone poles were covered with flyers showing smiling faces and captions like, "Have you seen her?" drenched by rain. My phone and wallet were replaceable. My nightmares weren't. Sammy left early, refusing to attend any public events. I stopped carrying cash and began clipping my phone inside my pants. Every time I pass Riverside Park, I look at the new steel gates. They're taller now and only open from the inside during events. I wonder if those upgrades matter against mines that can kill the power and chain the exits shut. The city still hosts outdoor screenings, but never again at midnight. They end promptly at 10, the lights never go fully dark, and armed officers guard every gate. Sometimes at night I mentally replay the moment the lights came back on, and I saw the empty spaces where people once stood. The white screen was bright enough to read by, and still 14 lives vanished without a trace. The soft hum of that white van still echoes in my mind when I can't sleep. I've learned that terror doesn't always wear a mask or growl in the dark. Sometimes it plans for months, smiles behind a volunteer badge, and waits for the perfect blackout to pull you from your place and erase you from the crowd. Now I carry a small notebook with me to every public event. I write down details, where the exits are, how the security looks, what vehicles are nearby. My friends say I'm paranoid, that lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place. But I was there when lightning was carefully designed, wired to a panel, timed to a scene change, and accompanied by silent chains. I believe lightning can be built with patient hands, and I never want to stand in its path again. Story 3. Last July, my best friend Mason and I felt burned out after finishing our second year of college. We barely had any money, but we hunted online until we found a one-room cabin on Lake Archer for just $80 a night. Neither of us had seen the place in person, but the photos showed crystal clear blue water, a wooden dock, and a small rowboat tied to a cleat. We tossed our sleeping bags, a cooler full of cheap groceries, and a portable speaker into Mason's beat-up sedan and drove 4 sweltering hours from campus, telling ourselves that 3 days away would fix everything. Summer class fatigue, part-time jobs, and all the stress we'd piled up. The first glimpse of the lake almost made the whole trip worth it. It was the week before the 4th of July weekend, so the West Shore was buzzing with jet skis, kids on inflatable tubes, and groups grilling under striped awnings. Our cabin sat on the quieter east side, tucked between 2 larger rental homes whose occupants hadn't arrived yet. It was barely bigger than a garden shed. 2 twin beds, a kitchenette at the back, and a bathroom so small you had to turn sideways to close the door. The wooden planks smelled like a mix of aged cedar and stale water. A single spare key hung by the front entrance, attached to a blue floating keychain. The owner's welcome note asked that it be left there in case someone accidentally got locked out. That first afternoon felt like we had run away from home. We swam off the dock, failed miserably at fishing with handmade lines, and grilled greasy, cheap burgers that drew mosquitoes from every corner. Around 10 p.m., fireworks exploded across the distant West Shore, painting the water red. By 11, the big boats had gone quiet, and only crickets, bullfrogs, and the distant hum of an air conditioner filled the night. The heat inside the cabin was stifling, so we left the door and windows open and lay on top of our blankets. I drifted off, surrounded by the scent of sunscreen and charcoal. Shortly after 1 a.m., a low sound woke me, a motor rumbling across the water. At first, I thought it was part of a dream, but the sound grew clearer, the slow, gasping rhythm of an outboard engine idling at minimum speed. I sat up and looked through the mesh over my bed. Moonlight silvered the small ripples, all pointing straight toward our dock. The engine cut off, and the lake surface turned eerily still. Then a beam of white light swept across the dock, hovered over our boat, past 2 folding chairs, and stopped exactly where the spare key was hanging. The flashlight stayed there long enough for my heart to pound loudly in my ears. I couldn't see who was holding it, just the narrow cone of light moving slowly over the wood. A soft thud made the dock ladder vibrate. The light snapped off, and 2 footsteps echoed across the boards before everything went silent. I waited for the engine to start again, but it didn't. Only the small waves lapping against the stilts. I pressed my face to the mesh. The lake looked completely empty, still as glass. I didn't have the guts to wake Mason because I had no proof anyone had been out there. I checked my phone to call the police, but the battery blinked at a measly 3%. I lay back down, eyes wide open, until dawn light crept over the hills. Mason stirred at 6 and noticed my expression. I told him exactly what I'd seen. He frowned but said it was probably just a drunk fisherman using a flashlight to read the shoreline markers. I wasn't convinced, but the sun was up and chainsaws were buzzing on nearby docks as weekend projects got underway. Daylight made the night feel like a bad dream. We stepped outside and froze. The blue floating keychain was gone. 3 narrow, muddy footprints stained the doormat, pointing straight toward the front door. Another set of identical prints led back to the lake, disappearing into a stretch of wet sand. Whoever came had been barefoot, and the marks were still damp. Inside the cabin, all drawers and backpacks were untouched. Our phones, wallets, even Mason's old laptop were right where we left them. Even the $20 bill I had tossed on the counter for firewood was still there. Only the key was missing. We made up comforting explanations. A prank, a bored teen, someone who got the wrong cabin. But none of them held for long. We stashed anything valuable in the car trunk, hammered in a longer nail beside the door, and tied the new key to a shoelace as a backup. We tried to salvage the day. We rode through quiet coves, watched a bald eagle dive for a fish, and ate sandwiches on the dock with soft music playing from Mason's phone. The lake felt harmless in the sun, but I couldn't stop watching every passing boat, listening for the sound of the motor from the night before. After sunset, the wind vanished and the cabin turned into a wooden oven. We opened the back window all the way and aimed a small fan at our beds. Around midnight, a faint noise woke me. A dry screech of metal against wood, repeated 3 times. Mason sat up too. We both watched the doorknob turn left, then right. The lock held. The knob stopped moving. We waited for more noise. Footsteps, whispers, but nothing came. Just my breathing. I carefully opened the door. The porch was empty. The shoelace key was still hanging, but the air smelled strange, like rotten algae in a plastic bucket left in the sun. We barely slept. After breakfast, we walked along the lake to see if any neighbors had noticed anything strange. About 50 yards east, half hidden among reeds and fallen branches, we found a small fiberglass skiff jammed in the mud. The motor's propellers were tangled in weeds, and the boat's ID numbers had been sanded off. Inside were a red gas can, a damp towel, and an empty box of motion sickness pills. I took pictures with my phone and sent a short message to the cabin owner. "We found this nearby. Is it yours?" The signal was so weak the message failed to send. We weren't enjoying the trip anymore, but we didn't want to spend what little money we had on a motel. We drove into town, sat in a cafe until dark, and only returned because exhaustion and pride outweighed our fear. We pushed the small dresser against the door, armed ourselves with the biggest kitchen knife and a rusted tire iron from the car trunk, and left a lamp on. The cabin creaked. Insects bounced against the screens, but hours passed without the sound of any boat. At 2:17 a.m., that time is burned into my memory. Mason's phone lit up the ceiling with a useless calendar alert about an old assignment. Then came a sharp knock against the rear window frame. The glass vibrated slightly, then stopped. Another knock, followed by the squeak of the window lifting an inch. Someone outside was reaching for the latch, the one we'd forgotten to secure. I turned off the lamp, plunging us into near-total darkness except for moonlight glinting off the floorboards. Mason gripped the iron tight. I held the knife, realizing my hand was trembling and sweaty. A head pushed against the mesh. I saw a soaked baseball cap and dark hair plastered to a forehead. The smell hit us, stagnant lake water mixed with something moldy, like rope left wet too long. The man froze, half his body inside, listening closely. Water dripped from his sleeves onto the floor. His fingers traced the interior wall until they stopped right at the light switch. Mason moved before he could touch it. The tire iron slammed the window frame hard. The intruder jerked back faster than we expected. The cap flew off and landed at my feet. Outside, bare feet splashed through the mud and raced across the dock. The outboard coughed once, roared full throttle, and vanished into the night. After that, only the waves remained. We packed in 5 frantic minutes. Driving up the gravel road, we saw a patrol car parked at the public dock. We flagged it down, waving our arms, and told the story in a chaotic rush. Officer Ruiz listened patiently, followed us back to the cabin, photographed the wet footprints, lifted prints from the window frame, and bagged the cap. When we showed him the skiff, he radioed for a lake tow. He told us thefts around the lake had spiked over the past month. Cabins, sheds, boathouses. No one had encountered the thief face to face until us. Most owners only noticed missing coolers or fishing rods days later and didn't even call the cops. He escorted us to the state highway. Then we pointed Mason's car home, both of us too rattled to speak. A week later, Officer Ruiz emailed us. The cap's prints didn't match any database. The skiff held a tackle box zip-tied shut. Inside were several cabin keys, including ours, and a waterproof phone wrapped in plastic. The last message sent from that phone read, "Next time just watch." It had been sent to a number that had since been deleted. 2 nights after we left, officers patrolling the east shore spotted a boat with no lights. When they spotlighted it, the driver sped up, swerved, and the boat nosedived and sank. Divers recovered the hull, but no body. Ruiz thinks the intruder carried weights to vanish beneath the lake if caught. I tried getting back to college life, but every time a truck or motorcycle roared past my apartment, I felt that lake motor vibrating in my chest. Mason changed his morning jog route to stay under streetlights. Friends asked why we looked so bad. We gave a watered-down version. Someone tried to break into our vacation cabin. We left out the smell, the patient hand reaching for the switch, the footprints that led right to our beds, before the walls stopped them. This spring, Mason sent me the washed cap in a plastic bag. A note said, "Ready to close this chapter." He wanted to rent the same cabin again in July. Bring padlocks, motion lights, maybe a drone. I held the cap for a full minute, ran my thumb along the frayed brim, and tossed it into my kitchen trash. I texted him to find another lake. So far, he hasn't pushed. Sometimes, when the night air smells like the lake, I wake up at 1 a.m. The street is silent, but I still get up, check the deadbolt, and make sure the spare key is buried deep in my backpack, not hanging visibly by the door. I listen. Most nights there's nothing to hear, but the image stays. 3 wet footprints glowing on the doormat, stopped only because they hit a wall, not because whoever made them ever planned to stop.